Hey, welcome to the podcast. My name is Eric Ortina. I'm your host. I have been a competitive long-range shooter for over a decade now, but I'm still in learning mode. That's the reason that I started this podcast, because I want to talk to people that I can pick their brains and learn something from. Now, why did I call it Believe the Target? Well, the target is really the only one that tells the truth. There's many ideas, many theories, many experts. However, the target ultimately decides who's right. Anyway, if you're not subscribed to this podcast, make sure you subscribe right now. Go give it a like, and let's get started. Morgan, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Man, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while now. You're killing it in PRS.
Yeah, when I show up, I guess sometimes.
That's number one rule. That's the number one rule. You got to show up.
Yeah. It's tough right now. I got a lot going in school. So I tried to get as much shooting and much traveling as I could done this spring because I knew we started clinics in May, the beginning of May, and I've been busy ever since. I haven't taken a week off in the last 20 weeks.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's number one. I often get new shooters that they want to try out, not try out, but they want to get into PRS, or they want to get F class or bench, whatever discipline they want to try. And they say, well, what's the best way to get started? I said, show up, just show up. And the rest just happens.
Yeah. It's real hard when guys, they want to get started but yet they want to show up and they want to win. And I think it's just because most guys, they're used to playing sports or whatever and being good, and they forget the process of getting good because they did it when they was a kid. And then all of a sudden they want to start playing this game, and they grew up their whole life shooting, but they didn't grow up shooting like this. And so all of a sudden it's a whole new sport to learn, and it takes time to get good at it. And I think if you show up to a match, you can learn more about your setup. You can learn more about what's going on, about gear people use just by showing up. So I think that's about as good advice as you can give anybody that wants to get into it.
Yeah, because, I mean, even you being one of the top shooters in the world, really, you can't expect to show up and win every match.
Well,
so for somebody,
I try to.
I know you try, but it's not a guarantee, right? So for somebody who's just starting out to have that expectation, it's unrealistic.
Yeah, no, it is an unrealistic expectation. But like say, coming from especially a lot of people that get into this and want to get good, they generally come from, and I know I'm speaking in generalizations now, but most people come from some other area and they were good, whether it was football, baseball, whatever. They have this competitive gene or something. And so they're like, I gotta win. And so when they show up to this, they feel like they gotta have all the little boxes checked off, and they feel like they have to show up and be competitive. And so it does one of two things. Either it knocks them down, which this is how it was for me. I just showed up, I got knocked down, and was like, holy crap, I got to get better at this. So then it pushed me to do better. Or they show up and they're like, that's stupid, and they never go back. Kind of like a guy that picks up a golf club when he's 40 years old that's played all kinds of other sports, and then, like I say, one or two things happens. He shows up, hits the ball, and goes in the rough, and he throws the club, and he walks off the golf course and never goes back.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. They have an option to make: either get better or quit. And if they go in with the expectation of learning, then that's going to make things a lot easier for them, because they're going to realize how much there is to learn. And the way I see it is, the worse I get beat, the more there is for me to learn from the people that are there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But I see, and I guess that mentality, it's something I don't understand, right? You're probably like me, where if you get knocked down and you get beat, it's like, man, I got to go get better. Those people probably have the same idea, but yet they're like, man, they look at it and they're like, man, I got to invest this much time and do this. Do I really want to do all that? And the match directors hear about it and they're like, well, then I need to tailor how this match is, maybe bring it down some because I just lost a guy, because of this, because they hear about that one dude that showed up and chucked his proverbial golf club into the woods and then left. Right. And so then you hear match directors and they're worried about that guy. Well, everybody else, yeah, they might have got their butt kicked, but they're like, I learned something today, And so I think sometimes, at least I've seen that in like our little local region. I've seen it at a couple other matches where it'll scare a match director to that mentality. Will.
So I've noticed that matches have changed over the years. Do you think that's the main driving factor?
Well, I think, and I don't know, maybe you have a better perspective than me, but I think they've actually. So what I'm saying is if what I'm saying is true, they got easier, right? But I think the opposite has happened since I started. So I think they've gotten harder, but I also think, but maybe relatively they've gotten easier. And what I mean is our gear, the guns that we shoot, everything. It's leveled off about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. The gear, everything just kind of, it doesn't matter. There's new things that come out, but it doesn't like change the game. Like I remember when the Game Changer came out, and that literally was a game changer. Like the way everybody used a bag completely changed. And you can still use that first version of that bag and go to a match and win with it. Well, now we've got different sizes and all kinds of things. It doesn't really matter because you could take that old same one and win with it. So there's certain things that are more convenient, but it won't change the outcome of a match or whatever. So I think that's stagnated for the last 2 or 3 years probably. But since I started like 7, 8 years ago, the matches have gotten exponentially harder. Like, I remember showing up to matches when the targets were average of 3 minutes almost, and guys were winning with the top guy getting 70%. If you had a match like that, that would go just like Prentice's match this spring that Austin Bushman cleaned. That's how, and not only one guy would clean it, there'd be like 3 guys that cleaned it. It's just the way that it would be, and it's because guys are so good now, and when one of those old style courses of fire pops up, it's cleaned.
Yeah.
That being said, only one match has gotten totally clean, but a lot of days have been clean and stuff like that, and I think it goes back to just the match being a little easy and guys being real good.
Guys have definitely gotten better, and I think as the top guys get better, so do the entry guys, right? Because they don't have to come up with anything new. They just, and I always tell them, listen, just copy what the good guys are doing, copy that blueprint, and then just work on you, because the blueprint works, right? And then like you said, the Game Changer bag, the WeBad bags, the pump pillows, whatever, just go to a match. And this is why it's so important to show up to a match, because you can see what they're using, and then you don't have to waste money or time learning something that really doesn't work. I had a guy come here one time, and he wanted me to give him some pointers. His wife actually emailed me multiple times, and she wanted to give her husband a day out of the range with me, and she finally convinced me, and we did it. And he showed up, and he had a palm shelf, and he had a monopod, and he had all that stuff. And I said, he goes, well, what's first? I said, well, take all that crap off. You don't need it. Well, I read. I said, well, I get what you read, but take it off. So first thing we did is take all that off, and I said, here's a sandbag. I think I had a WeBag fortune cookie or something. I said, this is that in the bipod is going to be the majority of what you'll ever use. And
in fact, I think that well, and I've flown a lot of places just one bag. I just just a game changer with sand in it. And I use a Schmedium or a Schmedium +1. Doesn't really matter. But I've flown all over the place just with that bag. Not another bag in my backpack. And one bipod.
When I started, I decided I was going to try PRS. I shoot for Team Lapua. And when I decided I'm going to try PRS, I looked to see if they had any shooters that shot PRS. And there was this one guy, Matt Brousseau. So I called the Lapua guy and I said, "Hey, give me this guy's contact info. I want to talk to that guy." Because I looked him up and he was freaking killing it. He had just won the Golden Bullet. I said, "Oh yeah, that's the guy to talk to." So anyway, I called him up, and he said, "No, yeah, all you need is one bag." I said, "Well, what about all this other stuff?" He goes, "No, just practice with that one bag, and that's all you need." Okay, so that's what I did.
Yep,
and he was right.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's about as good advice as you can get. Is just get one bag. It doesn't matter if it's a Weebad or if it's basically there's two main bags out there, right? You got your Weebad, your fortune cookies with sand fill and wax material, and then you have the Armageddon Game Changer. I like the Schmedium with wax fill or with wax canvas and sand fill. If you get one of those two bags, it doesn't matter which one. And then you get an Oklahoma Special rifle. So you got your impact foundation. Doesn't matter to the barrel company. I'm not supposed to say that. Get you a benchmark barrel. Get you a benchmark barrel.
Or a Brooks or a Barbline.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I've had them all.
Get you a good barrel. I mean, it does matter. Yeah. So get back to the what are people winning with, right? There's multiple barrels that you can buy. Benchmark, Brooks, Bartline, Krieger, Proof. I think some guys use Proof barrels, but just any of those that are winning matches. Don't go off in the weeds and try out something that nobody's using as your first barrel, because if it doesn't shoot. Then
if you've heard of it, you can use it essentially.
Yeah.
Because generally, that's a decent rule of thumb. Like if you've heard of them before and somebody's talked about them somewhere, they're probably good enough there. Because
here's what I'm going to say: if you're buying your first rifle and you've never done this, and you're getting you call it the Oklahoma Special, ask Wade Suterville what barrel he recommends, and whatever he says, put that on there, and then you can later do your own thing. But
that's if you're getting an Oklahoma Special. Then you can look at like what I shoot, and you can look at what like Dave Preston, Ken Sanowski, any of those guys that are good. Just look at a Facebook picture of what they got. Like MPA, Lone Peak, Action. With a Bartland barrel, just put it together. It doesn't matter if you pick any guy in the top 50 in the country, maybe even the top 200 in the country, and you just build the gun that looks exactly like theirs, and get one bag, their main bag, and then just go out and shoot it. It doesn't matter. Like we could all show up. I guarantee play musical rifles and musical ammo for that matter. And it wouldn't change the outcome of a match.
Somebody's going to do that. Now that you said it.
I mean, we've talked about it a lot. Just because every time, people will say stuff and they're like, "Oh, my load went to heck," and all this stuff. And I'm not going to say that a barrel can't go out on a match. I've had it happen. Guys have had it happen. And that's just being stupid, because you're just like, well, when it's about done, you're like, man, I could take it to one more match, but I probably shouldn't. And that's when you should have quit it, 500 rounds ago,
right.
Because it's just not worth it to fly across the country and then on a barrel that's got, 2,000 rounds on it. Even the dasher with 2,000 rounds on it, I'm done at 1,800, because I just don't want to chance it. Now for a guy that's getting into the game, right? And he's put all this money into it. Like, I'm fortunate because it doesn't cost me anything to rebarrel a rifle other than just the time to break it in. Whereas everybody else, that's $600-700 plus ammo and time to get that gun shooting again. Whereas, I call somebody and a barrel shows up and then I go shoot it for a few hundred rounds and away we go. So I get it. And if you're in a different country, it adds a whole new level of crappy deal. So I know that you're going to be into that barrel. You're thinking I got to get 3,000 rounds out of it. So now it's not stupid. It's just I got to get what I can out of this investment. And if you are in a different country, it's probably a good idea to maybe get 2 or 3 barrels at a time, because I can't believe how much time it takes to get a barrel, like say South Africa or something. Talking to them guys.
Yeah.
But,
well, and it just adds a whole lot of problems, because you say, get 2 or 3. Well, the problem is they're so friggin' expensive.
I know.
Yeah, it's but anyway,
it's still
so
the point cheap part on the rifle.
I was going to say, the point of it is it's still the cheapest part. The most expensive part is bullets. So don't shoot them through a bad barrel. Simple as that.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's just so hard because I say that, people are like, oh, my gun starts shooting bad. And they're like, well, I need to change the load. And I'm like, you need to change the barrel.
Yeah.
And that's that's a real unpopular opinion because of confirmation bias, right? Like they don't want to believe that because that costs money, and so they want to believe that that I can turn 2 notches on my tuner brake, or I can change 2 or 3 tenths of powder, and all of a sudden it's magically going to shoot for the next 500 rounds, or if we're talking about a match, it's going to shoot for the next 200 rounds. And what happens is it might shoot for 2 groups, or it didn't, or it never really shot at all. It just put 3 next to each other, and you're like, woohoo, it worked. And then you go to the match and it shoots like a shotgun.
Yeah. Well, the beauty about PRS, especially for the newer shooters, is it's tough for them to have flyers. It's typically, they always blame the wind, right? Because there's so much going on in a PRS match, in the sense of you don't have stability, you have wind, and because you're not keeping track of every shot. Like I'm comparing it to F class, right? We're putting every shot on paper, so you can see how they're grouping, and all of a sudden you have this one that goes out there, and you go, okay, well, you do 2 things. Either you chase it, which means now you put one on the other side of the paper, or you ignore it, and then the shot goes back in the group, and then that was just a flyer, just a wild shot. In PRS, it's really hard to recognize those shots because of, again, the you're not stable, you got wind, and you got time factor, all those things. So it makes it more difficult, especially for a newer guy. Like, when I talk to you guys talk about how, how the plate swings, and how, you make corrections even when you're hitting, and I'm like, shit, man, I shot for about a year and I never got to that point. Like, if sometimes I found out that I hit it when the RO said impact.
I think everybody has that experience.
But the point is, like, there was 0 feedback from me on how the rifle was shooting, during a match. But
yeah,
I guess the whole point is it's just more difficult because of the nature of PRS. To figure out a gun that's not shooting too well.
I think there's guys out there that can do it, right? But we're talking like the top. There's not a lot, but there's a few guys. Like I know when I get a flyer. I know Bushman does, or Gain. Guys like that. They know you know when you get a flyer, but it's because you've shot enough, you know when you're the flyer and you know when your bullet's the flyer, you know.
Yeah, well, I
And
should have specified that. In F class, it's the same way. Like, not everybody can tell a flyer from the rest of them, you know. So
yeah,
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 I'm gonna say the top 5% can do it. Not everybody, but you take one of those top 5% in F class, which is me, and put me in PRS, and all of a sudden I become one of those that can't tell. You know, I guess what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
getting
yeah.
at is you can't take a top 5% from PRS and put him, I mean, from F class and put him in PRS, and all of a sudden he's a top 5%er. It's a different game. Everything's different. But again, I think PRS is more difficult in some aspects just because of the again, like for me, I can shoot prone. Like you get me a full PRS match that's all prone, I'm gonna hold my own against anybody, right? Because that's what I do. I do prone. The minute you get me off the ground, it's over.
You're a lizard, huh?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what I do, right? and vice
That's
versa, you
the
know.
I've thought about that for a long time. That's what they should call the Oklahoma boys, snakes. They just live on their belly.
I hear you. Uh,
No, they're pretty good when you get them off their belly. I
yeah,
just like teasing them about it.
yeah, might as well. So, you talked about your first match, how it was a little humbling. What was that like?
Um, so uh, it's been a long time since I've shot my first one, but I remember when I did. I showed up with a 7 mag. There was a I mean this will go to show you, like, I didn't have all the right gear. I had stuff that would work, but I didn't have all the right gear, and I mean, the game was a little bit younger, and so like that wasn't like a detriment to like my gun shot great. It was a Remington 700 that was mag fed, but it was a 7 mag that had a Krieger barrel on it. It was, I mean, it was a good shooting gun. I was shooting 162 grain bullets, which is funny because I shoot 156s out of 6.5 Creed, so it's not that far off. So I'm back to my old load, but no, I remember showing up, and I had shot for a while, just going out, and I used to do this all the time because when I got into shooting, it was for hunting. So when I'd go out and shoot, my mind was I wanted to figure out how to get a bullet on, like a minute or a minute and a half target every time, because I was thinking I want to be able to do this hunting, and had built this gun. So I mean, I'm out in the West, and a lot of shots you get are in, especially like just easy chip shots in that 400 to 800 yard range. That's just the way that it is out here. I mean, you can get closer, but then you run the risk of jumping them, and they start running, and that's a whole different ball game. But I mean, if you want chip shots, it's that if you can shoot 600 yards, or really if you can shoot 1,200 yards, so that 600 yards is super easy, then that's your best bet, because one starts eating along at 550 yards. If you've shot as much as we have, he just dies. There's just, like, it don't matter if it's 50-mile-an-hour wind, he's gonna die. And so that's why I started into this. And so I would go out and do that all the time. I'd go out with like 3 or 4 rounds. I'd go and be in different places, and I would pick out a rock that was between 600 and 1,000, and I'd sit there take as much time as I wanted in the wind, and then I would just shoot one shot, see where it went, shoot another one, and hit it. And then I would find somewhere else in the canyon and do the same thing. I'd do that twice a week, and I'd done that for like a year. And then all of a sudden I was at my local range, and guy Paul Higley, he's like, "Hey, you ever shot PRS?" Because we started talking about our guns, and I was like, no, what's that? And he's like, well, you should come do this. So then he took me to a little, it was a little belly match there in town, and I ended up second in that. And so I was like, oh, this is nice. I got this little competition deal. It was not PR. That was not PRS. That was like a little benefit belly match that all the hunting guys around me come out to, which there was a ton of, from there in Logan, Utah. There's actually a ton of people that are like industry hunting shooter type guys, like guys that work for Best of the West. Gunworks, I think, has like a little place that builds their actions in town. But none of the Gunworks guys were there, but like a bunch of Christensen Arms guys. I don't know if you've ever heard of, there's this Cross Canyon. Anyways, a bunch of little gun company dudes showed up for that. And the guys that I had heard their name, but really never met them. And so anyways, a couple months later, Paul's like, you should go to this PRS match with me. So I go to a PRS match, and that's when I got my butt whooped, because I had no idea. Like that one was prone. And like you say, at the time, like I could shoot prone, but I had no idea what was coming when it came to positional. And we didn't have no game changer bags. So that's back when, you'd jam your bipod into a panel and be sitting there like wedged up with a sling in your belt or something, trying to get stable. And so, it was like, I remember I shot well under 50% for that match, but so did everybody else. So it was like one of the things where there was only like 30 guys, and I didn't do that. I wasn't like in the top 10% or anything, like at least at that one, because I got DQ'd on a stage. But yeah,
how did you do that?
Oh, see, back then when you pulled the trigger, the gun was safe. But the problem is nobody else knows it's safe. So when I moved on a position, the guy that was RO, and he says, I couldn't hear him, and he goes, oh, you moved it was 2 movements with your rifle. Like you get a warning and then that, and he said that pulling my gun out and then putting it back in was 2 movements. So I was DQ'd, which is fine. I don't care. It's not safe. So I get it, and it had an empty in the chamber, because I just was thinking in my mind, because you're up hunting, you pull a trigger, gun there, it's empty. So then you just move it on to the next one. I didn't realize I can bolt back or anything like that. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it, right? I mean, I shoot a rifles only, and you got to pull the mag every time you move. Open the bolt, pull the mag, move, and and to them, the bolt back alone is not safe. You got to pull the mag. So if you move without pulling the mag, So again, it's just the rules.
I have my opinions on that one, but like say you play the game, right? Like I don't care if they tell me to, like I have to go through a hopscotch course before I shoot every round. I don't really care. I'll do it, because there's people that complain about matches all the time, and I'm not one to complain about matches, because I just want matches to shoot, and I don't want to put them on. So I just want to be able to show up and shoot. Like there's been people try to boycott matches and stuff, and I'm like, well, you guys have fun doing that. I'm gonna go shoot the thing, because I'm like, we need match directors. I don't want to put the match on. Those people don't want to put the match on. So just go shoot the match, and because you really can't bitch unless you show up and shoot it. So if you show up and shoot it, then you can give your input, whatever you think, but you don't have the right to complain unless you show up. It's kind of like voting in our country. You can't complain unless you go and vote, So right. It's just that, I don't know. And I feel like if somebody's willing to put on a match and it's close, they're always going to get my money.
Yeah.
There's just not enough close ones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole rifles only, I asked Jacob, I said, why do you make people pull the mag? He says, well, 2 things. It's safer. Does it need to be safer? Does it need to be safer? He goes, probably not, but it is safer. He goes, but the other reason is, he goes, at Rifles Only, we train pistol, we train with carbines, and we train with rifles. He goes, and everybody that does pistols knows how to do a tactical reload. They do carbine, they know how to do a tactical reload. Precision rifle, they're always fumbling with that mag. He goes, so I decided, you know what? Make everybody do that so they get used to it. And that way, when they go anywhere else, even if they don't have to pull the mag, at least they're practicing. So he looks at it as, hey, might as well learn a new skill while you're here.
Yeah. When I started, mag changes were like we didn't have 12-round mags or anything, mag extensions, or at least many of them. So I got pretty good at changing my mag. I used to practice that all the time. It's like, cause you were like, you just had to be able to hit it and put a new one in fast, you know?
Right.
So that's why I don't have a 2-round holder on the side of my gun. Cause I've always said that I'd rather have 10 or 12 of them on my belt than 2 on the side of my gun. Because if the argument's always, well, what if you drop your mag off a ladder? I'm like, well, shit, I'd hope the hell I got more than 2 rounds, you know, right. Like, and the single feeding, it, as fast as it may be, it's not faster than throwing a mag in. I don't think, because there's a lot of things that can happen on a single feed unless you're shooting a single feed action.
Well, and that's the point that I think Jacob was making. Like you said, well, you practice your mag changes. He says most people never practice mag changes. He says, so when they come to Rifles Only and they shoot there, it makes them go home and practice their mag changes. He says, yeah. And he goes, that just made them better.
Thing. It's the simplest thing. Like you lay down or be on a barricade and bam, in. It's done.
Right.
You know, it's not like it's that hard. I mean, I know exactly where my mag is all the time. I can almost feel it on my side right now, you know. I know exactly where it is because I'm so every time I see somebody without a mag on their belt in a match and they're serious, I'm like, what? Like, maybe if you just don't care, but like, that's like one of them things, like you'd never see me unless I have given up on the match. There will always be a mag on my belt because, yeah, and it will be filled. There's very rare, unless I'm running out of ammo, I will borrow ammo to put in my mag. Because I'm so paranoid about my mag jam and a bullet not going, like a round not going off, something like that, and then not having extra ammo. I'm like that. I get real paranoid about not having a mag. It makes me super nervous not having one. And maybe it's all in my head, but you know, there's always 2 or 3 times out of the year I use one.
I carry a mag on my belt because I learned that when I started shooting PRS, the guys that I was with, they said, you need mag pouches. You got to have them. And so I've been wearing mag pouches since day one. Right. And, but to this day, like you're talking about, I see guys that just say, I got pockets. I don't need mag pouches. And then while they're shooting, they need another mag and they're digging through their pocket and it gets hung up and they just kill so much time. And it seems simple, but it's not, especially on the clock when you got to do a mag change and you got to dig it out of your pocket.
Well, I see a lot of guys that don't even have a mag in their pocket. I've seen guys run out of ammo and just pick their gun up and just move off the line. And I'm like, that just would never happen to me, ever. There's not a snowball's chance in hell I'd be in that situation. Because I would always be able to, like, I've had it to where something and I eject a round or something and I just know, boom, I just hit the button, new mag's in, it's over. I mean, I've done it. I've won, I can think of several matches, at least 2 right off the top of my head, that I've won and probably would have lost without having an extra mag.
Well, Yeah, I mean that's all about preparation, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah.
I started shooting F class, the my mentor said he says shooting is much like life; it rewards preparation, and I that's still to this day has stuck with me. He says shooting rewards preparation, and yeah, so I prepare.
That's what scares me right now about my shooting is I've been is like yeah, as soon as this fourth year of vet school started, I've been well they just they don't care about your time. Your time is their time. So
Yeah,
practicing's been not that am able to practice. I was able to practice that much before but I mean I could study at night and maybe go shoot in an afternoon or something and then study all night or whatever versus now it's like, no, you got to be here. And so you walk into school, it's dark, and you leave the school, it's dark, type deal.
yeah. The you talk about preparation or practicing. What what kind of practicing do you typically do? Or you say you don't have much time now, but uh, you mentioned the mag changes. That's important. What else
Yeah.
should somebody that's getting going on the game, trying playing the game, what should they be practicing?
I think so. My deal is it's hard to, like you say, if you talked about being able to see where the bullet goes and all that. Uh, that your best bet is to do kind of like is to shoot in the prone. That's going to be your best way to figure that out because you got to see it before you can. And the easiest place to see it is in the prone and recognize it, and then you can slowly improve your ability to see it in all positions. Um, so if you want to learn to see where your bullets go, it's going to be easier done in the prone. And now, do I think you need to spend a lot of time doing that in the prone? Probably not. It's probably better just to go to matches and try to start paying attention. But what I found that most people what screws most people's ability to process, because it's not that. So you talk about, oh man, I had a tough time seeing where the bullet goes. If you to put us at the same match, and I'm sure now you can see where the bullet goes a lot of times, but when you started, and similar with me, if I take myself 8 years ago when I started versus myself right now, my nervous system saw the same image then as it does now when I pull the trigger and hit the target. Like it's the exact same image or collection of images that I saw in that moment, right? The difference is at what level did I process the information that I saw? And that all goes, that comes down to how much cognitive processing power, CPU, whatever heck you want to call it, I had available at that time. So the problem is when you start, you're not thinking about where's the bullet going, where did that hit? That's not your prerogative. Your prerogative is, how do I get my gun into the position and then without killing anybody? And then how do I get on target and then where's the target? And then, oh yeah, I got to close my bolt. Oh, now I need to pull the trigger. And then they're usually already on to the next position, trying to figure out how do they get through it with the time and all that. And they're just trying to make it through the course of fire without killing themselves or anybody else. And that's fine. That's just where you're at in your shooting. So the faster you can get to where all of that stuff, the stuff of where do you put your bag, where do you set your rifle, where do you do all this, and how do I get through it without killing somebody? How do I, like all the routine motions that we do all the time, how do you make those to where you don't have to think about that? So your brain is like, my thoughts the entire time I'm shooting is, all right, okay, I'm just thinking on my process of shooting. So I'm thinking as soon as my bolt closes, I'm like level, And then I put my finger on the trigger. I think trigger, and then I think squeeze, 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 boom, and I think freeze, and I just where did, and then and then in my mind every time there's a question that comes up, where'd the bullet go? And so I'm just boring a hole in the target, trying to see exactly where that bullet hits, and then I think, okay, now what? So as far as like if it's a 10th left, okay, I'm gonna move a 10th right, and then I run my bolt, and then I do the same thing again. And then as soon as I pull my bolt back, I know what position I'm going in, and I don't think about where to put my bag or anything. It just ends up there, and it ends up in the right position. My gun ends up on top of it, and I end up stable. I don't have to think about any of that stuff. And so I'm thinking in my mind, okay, where'd the last bullet go? All right, I need to do this, and then that's what I'm thinking 100% about, where the bullets are going. And I'm present in the moment, where everybody else, or at least somebody that doesn't have their the mechanics of the game second nature, they're thinking about that type of stuff, where guys like Austin Bushman, Dave Preston, Nick Godarzi, Jake Vibert, those guys have that to where that never comes up.
Yeah, that's very similar to F-class shooters. The new shooters, they go, I don't know how to read the wind. I said, the problem is you're not even reading it. You're worried about so much other stuff that you're not even looking at the wind. You're looking at where your shot hit, and then you're trying to figure out how to. There's so much going on that the focus is not on the wind; it's on everything else. That's very true. When like you talk about how I could see my impacts when I shot prone in PRS. Because again, that's my cup of tea. That's what I do. I could even see my trace. A lot of times I could see my own trace, see where it hit, and that's why I was, pretty good at prone, because again, for me, that was second nature. But the minute I got off the ground, it's like, how do I do the bag? How do I, there was a match that I did recently where I've never done any type of 2-gun stuff. And it was a pistol and a carbine. And they let us carry a game changer bag. Well, so I got the carbine slung up, and I got a pistol. And then the first stage is pistol. So I shoot pistol. I holster the pistol, transition to the carbine, and I got the game changer bag on me. I go and I shoot with a carbine, and then got to transition to pistol. So I drop the bag. I throw the carbine back. It's on a sling. I drop the game changer bag, and I engage with a pistol, and then I move. Well, I forgot the bag, right? Because I was worried about everything else. And it's like, how, after I saw the footage, I'm like, how the hell did I forget the bag? And it's exactly what you're saying. I was worried about everything else, that the bag, and it's something I've never done before in a sense of doing 2-gun type of stuff. And it got overloaded, like you're talking about. My CPU is not very robust to begin with.
I don't think any of us have much CPU, right? It's just how much do you have available, right? We all have this capacity, and depending on how many unknowns you're dealing with, your CPU gets bogged down pretty quick. That's what. Yeah, it's hard, because there's guys that show up that, like, they're 100% of their CPU is free to think about where the bullet's going, and those are the guys that are dangerous.
Right. And the only way you get there is by practicing the basics,
Yep. That's why I guess I like to just practice, and this is, so I practice just my shot process, right? I think a lot of guys, especially new guys, they maybe just need to like put together, if you're brand new, like get used to the time limits. I used to do a lot of like 60 seconds, 6-shot, courses of fire, like, so it was like, I would show up and I would think, all right, I got 36 rounds. I'm going to do 6 stages of 6 rounds. And I would do 60 seconds, 6 rounds, and 3 positions. That was a lot of what I would do. If I had a barrel, I would do the barrel 3. I'd have to move the barrel in 3 different positions. and I would shoot a target, one target, it didn't matter, or two targets, just go left, right, or whatever, and then I would transition left, right. I did that a lot, and then you just get the mechanics down, and you get used to having a clock. You get used to that, and then then you got to move on. Once you get to where that's okay. You don't have to think about anything there. It doesn't take long to get that down. Then I think you need to go back to I just do one shot at a time, because if you shoot the second shot, doesn't really matter, right? You should be able to hit every second shot in a match. Really, the only unknowns you should have at a match are your first shot. And then after that, it should be all something that you know now, because you've already shot in those conditions, and you should be able to read enough of the change by just paying attention to stay on a plate, that's a minute, 2 minutes wide. You should be able to. Now, I'm not saying that you do that 100% of the time, but you should be able to. So yeah, that's what I practice now.
The best indicator of what the wind is doing is your previous shot.
Yep, 100%.
So yeah, I get what you're saying. What I used to do when I started doing a little bit of PRS, and I would go and set up course of fire, something, again, time limit was my problem. I would rush everything thinking I'm going to run out. And turns out I was just rushing and missing shots for no reason, when all I need to do is slow down. So I had to go and start practicing to get used to the clock. And I would set up whatever course of fire, and I would dry fire it 2 or 3 times. The course of fire, just pretend like you're shooting it, dry fire it, and then I get done, and then I look at my watch and see how much time I had left. Or sometimes I'd time out but it didn't matter. I would do that multiple times until I got the timing right, and then I do live fire. And then, I change it up or do the same thing over and over, and I do 2 times or 3 times dry fire and then live fire. And that allowed me to do a lot more practicing, because I don't think you want to start with live fire right away. It just, again, that just adds another dimension. Now it just adds recoil to the equation, right? And now you can't call your shots. What I really worked hard is calling my own shots when I broke the trigger. And for me, I found that dry firing was the best way for me to get used to that.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I think dry fire is really, really good in the beginning. I don't think it's bad later. I think you just get less out of it. And I think it's super good because of getting those mechanics down, right? I think, and doing little stages, I think that's great. My favorite type of practice is what I call is one shot drills. And I've talked about them a lot. There's videos you can find on YouTube with me going through it, but it's just basically where I shoot one shot with a shot timer, and I'll go and I'll just practice one position, shoot one shot at I like to have a 1 minute target at between 400 to 600 yards, because I feel like 1 minute is it. Basically, if you miss that, and it's honest, right? It's basically like shooting dots at 100 yards, which I like doing that too. But if you're keeping all your shots, if you're keeping 90% of your shots on a 1 minute plate, between 400 and 600 yards, you're going to do fine anywhere. And so it just doesn't lie to you, right? You could have a 2 minute plate up there, and you can be spreading them things all over the place, or 3 minutes. And it's just building it's just building up false confidence. And so anyways, I just do that. And a lot of times I try to do it as slow as I can, but I speed up all the mechanical part, like the part of like running my bolt. I do that fast. I get in the position, get stable on target as fast as I can. And then I spend as much time as possible squeezing the trigger, because I feel like that's where the money's won anyways, is they're doing 2 things. breaking the trigger perfectly and following through. That's where you make your money. You do the rest of it is where you collect. Is just go through the motions and get it all. But as far as like winning, it happens with your pointer finger and your brain. And connecting the two is the hard part.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. Again, even in F class, which is, it appears like we're not doing much because we have a front rest and a rear bag and you're laying prone. But I see that also where they don't follow through. A lot of shooters don't follow through and they go, man, that wind got me. And I'm like, no, that you got you. You pull that shot. And because it doesn't take much at 1,000 yards when the target is 1 MOA. And you can't ever be outside the 1 MOA if you're trying to win. And it doesn't take much. 1,000th of an inch times 1,000 is 1 inch. So you move that barrel 1,000th of an inch, it's going to move it 1 inch over there, right? So the if we're centered up, all we have is 5. You can only move the gun 5,000ths of an inch, and you're off the 1 MOA target. It's not much. That's
wild.
Yeah, and you guys are having to do it off of freaking unstable platforms. That's what I mean. It's if you really do the math, it's not much. It's very, very little.
That's crazy to even think about, because I can just see wobble in my mind and squeezing through it and then still hitting stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, when I practice, I do a lot of it on those little tiny. Like I do a lot like on a 4-inch plate at 400 yards, and I can see my wobble on the plate and then squeezing and just put them right in the middle.
Yeah.
Well, which obviously at 400 yards is not a lot, but when you're talking angularity, but we shot a lot of plates at that far. It's just wild to think that only 1,000th of an inch. But I've heard that before. I've heard of guys talking about how much your barrel, or I think Brian Litz talks about it, about how much of an inch it takes to move a bullet and at your barrel. That's wild.
Yeah, it's not much.
Yeah, that little flinch in your hand, right? I've always thought about this is like it's hard. This is the biggest thing I think is really hard about making a good trigger pull and good follow through, is that it's hard to train your brain that is adapted for eons to avoid danger, right? And yet we have an explosion happening 3 feet in front of our face. And then we're trying to tell our mind that the eye needs to stay open and it needs to stay focused on a bullet going down the barrel and out of there, and to not react to it like at all. Like you just want to just slowly squeeze until the gun goes off, and you want the trigger in your hand to stay in the same position, just absorb the recoil and just sit and watch like nothing even happened, like you just dry fired the rifle. And yet the gun's moving back at you. You had this big old explosion happen, and you're just supposed to just be numb to that. And that's a tough thing to override. It takes a lot of practice in your mind to do it.
Yes, it does take a lot of practice, and I practice that forever. Like I practice, the first thing that I started working on is like, don't close your eyes. Like quit, just don't close your eyes when even dry firing. And it was tough. It was so tough. But I practiced and I practiced and I practiced, because again, right, to me that was the first sign that you're reacting, like you flinch. You don't flinch, but a lot of people do. And I did at one point, but I had to break all those habits. And now when I film myself all the time shooting, and people go, I find it amazing that you don't flinch when you shoot, or you don't close your eyes when you shoot. And I haven't thought about that for a long time, but that's something that I worked at really, really hard. And yes, following through. I shot silhouette for a while, so it was you have to do all that while you're doing offhand and still try to see where the bullet went, So, but it's fun, man. I think everybody should try different disciplines, and there's something to learn from everything.
Yeah, the one I want to play is I would like to go play X class. I think that's just be fun to just sit and read wind for an afternoon, or whatever, however long they take. I shot one 600-yard one like when I was in high school, and it was like, I mean, I sucked.
Yeah,
but it's been
sometimes still suck. Sometimes I still suck. I went and shot rattlesnake, which is kind of over there, close to where you're at. You know where rattlesnake's at? Tri-County or Tri-City? What do they call it? Tri-County?
Oh, Tri-Cities. Yeah, see, I don't know nothing about up here. I've only been up here because I lived in Utah my whole life, and then I moved up here for the last 2 years of vet school. So I've only been up here.
Well, Tri-Cities, they have a range called Rattlesnake, and it sits on top of the mountain there, and it's freaking windy. And that's one of the toughest ranges in the nation. They have something they call the Rattlesnake Clean, and the targets for F-class are about 5 feet wide, right? And you're shooting them with big guns and shooting prone and all that. A Rattlesnake Clean is when everybody shoots and everybody misses a target because the wind just gusted so hard that it made everybody go off the target. And these are big targets. So that's a Rattlesnake Clean.
That happens?
Yes, that's what I mean. It's so bad that actually exists, a Rattlesnake Clean.
That is wild.
It is wild.
I mean, I've shot in some bad wind, but that's like a 40-mile-an-hour gust.
Exactly. And again, it can be really humbling to shoot a rattlesnake. But anyway, I went and shot there. But yeah, F-class is, Derek Webster came out and shot with us, and we kind of set him up. Some buddies of mine, national champions, set him up, and they gave him their national champion winning rifle and ammo and all the gear. And it was a pretty calm day. It's pretty much just aim center and pull the trigger. So Derek ended up winning the first match that he ever went to, But then the next time it's like, okay, now you got to bring your own rifle. Well, that was different then.
Really?
Yeah.
Did he bring his PRS gun?
No, he did, but he put some big Sherman Magnum barrel on it or something. But I think
just stuck with the BR.
I was going to say, I think PRS shooters would gain a lot by bringing their PRS rifles to an F-class match and see how they shoot for 60 shots. You know what I mean? You talk about how you get 3 shots and people think, well, I got a hammering load. If you go shoot 20 shots on paper, you'll see how your gun is doing and really how good you're doing at reading the wind, because in F-class, you got 30 minutes. There's no excuse for you to pay attention to the wind. And I think there's a lot to be learned from shooting F-class.
See, I agree, because I talk to people, in my mind, load development is this thing that is really hard to quantify because it's hard to test at the sample size that a PRS shooter is used to sampling their ammo. But because it's just not statistically relevant to be like this 5-shot group is going to get me to where I can keep all my rounds. Because I guess in my mind, and this could be completely wrong, I think my load should be able to shoot wherever I point the gun. All my rounds should go within 1/10 of a mil of my point of aim the entire match. That's my goal. Well, if you think about it, that's not a really great shooting gun, but it is at the same time. I mean, that means that all my rounds, generally that means I'm shooting 10, 20 shot groups that are, it's three-quarters
MOA gun.
Yeah. But I still don't feel comfortable unless I'm shooting, I should be able to put together 3 10 shot groups in a row that are under a half inch.
Right.
Or I'm like, nah, I don't want to take this gun. But most people don't shoot that volume of ammo to be like, yeah, this gun shoots good. But I don't. I've been burned so many times on 5-shot groups and stuff, just being like, yeah, it's good. Just getting lucky on a group or something, or I'll think, oh, this gun's not shooting real good, and I take it out one day, and when it's cool and it's just fresh, and it shoots the first 5 in a decent group, and I'm like, yeah, it's good enough. And then it's terrible, at the match.
Yeah.
So I learned real fast, you better shoot a lot more rounds.
Well, they always talk about how, the wind blew that shot out of the group. But the opposite could also be true. The gun could shoot like crap and the wind could blow them together. Right?
Yeah.
If one's possible, so is the other.
Exactly. Well, and that's why I like the F class. And that's why I've talked that same thing is by the time you're done, you're going to know how good your gun shoots and how well you can read the wind.
Right.
So I think but it's tough because, I don't have tons of time. So what time I do have, I use it going to PRS matches, but I'm always tempted.
Whether you're a seasoned shooter or just got your first rifle, you've got to pick up one of these. This is the Next Gen EC Tuner Brake by Cortina Precision. Its simple installation and Texas-built solid construction make it the perfect addition to your rig. Strong recoil reduction and optimal tuning make this the ultimate attachment for improving precision. The rear self-timing nut provides correct timing on any barrel. Our muzzle brakes incorporate an expansion chamber for maximum recoil reduction. Now let's see how it performs. Don't wait. Get yours today at shootsmallgroups.com.
It'd be good just show up to a mid-range match, 600 yards. Maybe don't go to 1,000 because there's a lot of noise at 1,000. Hell, there's enough noise at 600. But if it's a windy day at 1,000, there's going to be just way too much, But a PRS rifle, 600 yards, I think you're going to learn a lot more than people give it credit for.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's that's their bread and butter, 600 yards, right? Like I think
it's 1,000.
Well, no, for us.
Oh yeah.
PRS.
Yes.
That's bread and butter.
Yes.
In between 400 and 800, that's where we do our work. We don't have to worry about 1,000, but maybe 1 or 2 stages in a match, right?
Well, if you have a gun that shoots really well at 600, it's going to do well at 1,000.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm talking about for you guys, like
it's going to do it well enough.
Yeah, even for us. I mean, if you have a gun that consistently holds under 1 MOA at 600, it's going to do really good at 1,000, right? Like now if you have a gun, you go to shoot at 600 and then it's shooting 2 MOA at 600, it's going to be terrible at 1,000, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So 600 is a good indicator of what's to come at 1,000.
Do you use a shot marker all the time?
Yeah. Well, I do it here at home.
Yeah. I was just thinking, is that how you confirm your guns? Make sure everything's good?
Well, yes. I have 1,000-yard range, so I just work up all my loads at 1,000, and I used to do them at 100 for the longest time, and 100 takes some kind of level of skill and knowledge to be able to predict which groups will shoot at 1,000, because not all groups that shoot well at 100 will shoot at 1,000.
Okay.
But
do you mind explaining that to me?
I was going to say pretty much, if you have really low ES, a good consistent load that shoots consistently small at 100, and you have to shoot a series, like powder charges on each side of it. Like you can't just say, like what's your load, for example? What's your load for your rifle?
23, I don't know, something of, it's in milligrams. It's a milligrams, 2370 or something like that.
Okay, well, let's come up with a random number. Let's say
So
45.
it's like 39. Call it
Okay, let's say
39.
40 grains. Let's say
Okay,
40
40
grains.
40 grains.
You know, you want to shoot 39.5, 40, and 40 and a half at least, and see how they group, right? Typically, I like to look at the pattern, how your best load is doing and what it would do if you go outside of that, let's say temperature or whatever. But if it's stable all the way across that, like sometimes you have, and that's a big problem. People fall in love with that small group and they never shoot outside of it. And you might be right on the ragged edge of, the next, you go up 210s or 310s and it just shotguns, right? That's a bad place to be because any temperature change is just going to blow it up. So you want to be in a place that's stable. So that was the first thing I would do. I would shoot series, just incremental. I call it a ladder test. It doesn't have to be, people call it OC. There's all kinds of names for it, but I would shoot and make sure that number one, they were consistent size groups. Number two, that they would shoot on the same plane vertically. That, for example, 39.5 hit here and 40 hit here instead of 39 here. Now 40's up here and 40.5 is here, where it's climbing on you, even at 100 yards, because that creates problems at 1,000. You want a load that's flat, that you move the powder around, it still stays on the same plane vertically. And that typically, and if you have a consistent load, good extreme spread, that's going to shoot well at 1,000. And if it doesn't, there's only three things really. You have your, if you have a load that shoots small groups at 100 yards that has low extreme spread, and if it doesn't shoot at 1,000, now you have bullet problems because the rifle did all it could, right? It put them all in the air with relatively close speeds to one another, and they're going along the same path, and that is confirmed by the fact that they're going through the same hole or pretty close to the same hole at 100 yards.
Yep.
The remaining 900 yards, if they don't shoot, then you have a bullet problem,
Yeah.
But that's typically how I would troubleshoot my loads. But then I would at least go one or two club matches to make sure that I shot them under match conditions, things of that nature at 1,000 yards. But now that I have 1,000 yard range and I have a shot marker, so I just go straight to 1,000 because, it's just one after the other barrel wise. They're the same. So I just start with the same load from the previous barrel, get some practice in, and then I can start working up a load. But
gotcha. So here's my question. Have you ever took a bad load that you thought was bad and shot it?
Yes. That's the part of that shooting that series, right? Because one day they look bad, but this goes back to equipment. You talked about equipment. Our equipment is so specialized that they don't really shoot bad. You know what I mean?
That's what I kind of figured.
A bad load is not terrible load, but we've had them. We've had rifles. If it shoots bad, it's bad. It's a pretty definite thing that if you have an F-class rifle that shoots 2 MOA, it's not. There's no.
It's not going to shoot anything good.
Exactly. It might get a little better, but it's not gonna. It's not gonna be adequate ever. So. And I know that, the whole, I had a discussion with Jaden Quinlan twice about the whole small group sampling and all that stuff. And the first time I was just kind of pushing back quite a bit because we do a lot of 5-shot groups, but we don't do 5-shot groups. We do a pattern. We look at the, how they're progressing,
I took way too many statistics classes because I used to do the same thing. And then I was like, oh, frick, this.
Well, but then what I told him, I said, because he says, 2-shot groups don't tell you anything. And I'm like, well, I disagree. And he says, well, how so? And I said, well, if I will not accept anything over half MOA,
Okay. Yep.
and if I shoot 2 shots that are 1 MOA, what good is it for me to shoot another 20? You know?
That's been my only thing is I've said that a lot is I say the only thing you can learn from a 5-shot group or a 3-shot group is you can rule things out. That's the best you can do. But there's no statistical relevance that says that your 0.4 MOA group and your 0.2 MOA group, that the 0.2 MOA group is better than your 0.4 MOA group. You just haven't shot enough rounds to prove it.
Well, and here's where again I keep talking about that I look at the pattern, right? I don't look at groups individually. I look at them as part of a pattern, right? Dude. So for example, I might shoot 50 shots one day, and they're going to be incremental, and I'm going to be changing seating depths and powder charges and tuner settings and all of the above, right? But then I look at all the groups. And I go, okay, well, this group was better than this one, and this one's better than that one, and this and that and the other. But overall, not a single group was over 1 MOA, right? And I'm like, okay, well, my target's 1 MOA. So the worst case scenario here is out of those 50 shots was 1 MOA, still well under 1 MOA, right? And if I look at this range, for example, let's say powder, from 40 to 41.5, all the groups that I shot, they were always smaller than everything else, and they all stayed kind of together in a sense of they were vertically the same. You know what? That's a good place for me to, load at, just because it's not 5 shots, it's 25 or 30 that I'm looking at, And that's and we call that reading groups. You got to read the group and see how they behave, and see how they behave next to the groups next to them, right? And then again, the acid test, you got to shoot it at a match, 20 shots, and so before I ever take my guns anywhere to go shoot, after I settle on the load, I go and I shoot matches, practice matches. Yeah. They're 20 shots, and if it's shooting well, high X count, I try to look for about 75% X count, and that means out of the 20 shots, I want 15 to be into half MOA. Then I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, no, I think that's those 60 round groups or whatever. Like because F-class matches are 60 rounds, right?
Right, typically, yes.
Yeah, like if a guy can win one of those matches, that's amazing shooting gun.
Oh yeah, I mean, the record in F-class right now, the national record is 200 with 22 X's. That means 22 shots went into half MOA at 1,000 yards.
Yeah, and all of them went into 1 MOA.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, they all went into half MOA, so of course they went into 1 MOA.
Well, I mean that you're with 22 X's on top of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, so the typically you shoot 20 shots, right?
Yep.
But because he hit all X's, that means they all went into half MOA.
Keep shooting. Yeah, and you keep shooting if you're hitting X's.
Yeah, because if you shoot 20 X's, then they let you keep shooting, because otherwise there might be if they stop at 20 at some point there'll be 8 or 10 different people tied at the same record, right? So if you shoot 20, you keep shooting. Man. So he shot two shots extra in the X ring before he missed, and then the last one was at 10, which is still 1 MOA, but
but it's out of your X. That's wild.
Yeah. Can you imagine 22 shots in a row at 1,000 yards in a half MOA target?
Yeah, but you've ruled out luck, at that point.
Yeah.
It's not. You're not just getting lucky. I don't know. Low development's one of those things where I'm lucky that the PRS doesn't require that level. Yeah, and that is one of the nice things about it. And I feel like, and I've talked about it, I feel like I know you guys probably sort bullets.
Oh,
Probably
yeah.
you probably have your pet 20 pieces of brass or 60 pieces of brass.
No, I wish we could. No, because like for a world championship, I needed 700 pieces of brass.
Oh,
And
shit.
went all the way to South Africa. And then, for me, it was easier just to leave it all behind than to bring it all back. So I just threw it all away, So I wish the benchers guys are the guys that have those pet 20 pieces of brass because they don't shoot that much,
Okay,
But
so you don't have the pet 20.
No, I wish I could, but we don't.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. But
But still, you guys got everything sorted. Everything's to the kernel. Which so is it in PRS, like we can do that, but we can probably, at the volume we shoot, it's real hard to sort bullets. So, which luckily, if you shoot burgers, you probably don't sorted. Need to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't really need to. So like there's certain things. And so if you've got a good load, and as long as it's in a safe range, it's probably going to shoot plenty good.
There's plenty of matches that I shot in F class with just out of the box burgers, and they shoot well under 1 MOA,
Yep.
They're great bullets. I mean, that's just all there is to it, But,
yep.
Again, you say you're lucky that you don't have to do that for PRS, but you know what? If you had to, with your competitive nature, you would do it.
Yeah,
it's just, it would be part of the game, and it might be one day part of the game,
maybe.
Yeah,
I do point them just to uniform them all.
Well, I just developed we call it the bullet flow system, and it allows you to do if you have a Dillon 650 or 750, it allows you to get a Mr. Bullet Feeder, and you get you a bullet pointer. And the point is, you can automate your bullet pointing 100%. You just hit the button and just walk away, and then come back when all the bullets are pointed. And that's because I hated pointing bullets, but it's a necessary evil. I gotta do it.
Yeah.
And when I do bullets, no, I used to, and I no longer trim. I just point now.
Can you tell me why?
Yeah, I did plenty of testing, and a lot of my buddies were saying, well, you know what? I don't trim anymore. I just tested pointing, and so I started testing it. And at first I had horrendous results because I was not, pointing when you trim and pointing when you don't trim, you have to point at different levels. So I had to test it. And once I figured out what I needed, and pretty much you go until you measure your base to ogive on your bullet, and you start pointing until you deform it, until it changes, and then you back it off, 5 to 10 thousandths on that die, and you're good.
Okay, that's what I do. I just had to make sure that I was doing it right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And now, because I don't trim, my BC's higher. It's consistent, but it's also higher. So I was actually giving up a lot by trimming, and trimming didn't really do much in consistency. I found out.
I've never shot a 156 without pointing it.
Yeah,
so I don't know the difference. Guys are like, they shoot so good. Why do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know.
Because they shoot better.
I just do it.
They do shoot better. Like for you guys, pointing should be like, one of the top items on the list because they make your BC more consistent.
Yeah, that's the theory of why I do it, right? I've never tested it or anything.
We've tested it plenty, and we can have a gun, for example, I've done this multiple times. I'll have a gun that is 6 inches at 1,000, and I just can't get it below that. And typically when I start with a new lot of bullets, I start with them out of the box just to see how good they are, right? And then I'm like, okay, now I got to go on to pointing. And by pointing, I can most of the time shrink those groups by half. So if I have a 6-inch gun, now all of a sudden I have a 3-inch gun. So they do become more consistent,
Okay. Because I shoot factory ammo. Kind of like I get all the bullets. They show up to my house. I point them all, and then I send them to Eagle Eye in Arizona, and then he loads. So because he doesn't have any 156s. As soon as he gets 156s, pretty much the load that we kind of come up with will end up being the factory load. But it's like, but except for obviously I point my own before I send them to him. So I just take them all out of the box, point them all, send them to him, and then we'll load the 2385 milligrams, which is like 39 point something of N150, and he sends them back. Yep.
Yeah. So, I think everybody in F-class points bullets for that reason. It's, you're trying to hit the half MOA target. I know we have a 1 MOA, but we're all trying to hit the half MOA.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, my gun shoots plenty good. I know that. Like, I don't do load development anymore, but just because I don't have time, and I'm sure if I needed to, I would. Like if I got a gun that just sucked, but now it's like if the gun stops shooting that load, I just stop shooting that gun. Because usually it goes shoot forever. It feels like the barrels do, and the rounds, I like say if I can't keep them under the half-inch 10-shot groups, if I'm not doing that, I usually try to shoot 3 10-shot groups under, and they need to all be under half-inch, or I just won't take the gun to a match anymore. That's my benchmark.
Yeah. And again, it's, different sports have different requirements. And I often say this, and I'm going to say it again. If I have a gun that shoots half MOA at 100 yards, I just pull that barrel off, because I know for F-class, it's not going to be competitive, Yep. And if for F-class at 100 yards, I always had to keep it under 1/4 inch, like every group. Like, I had to, I would typically do 3 or 5 shot groups in a row.
Yeah. Yep.
They all had to be around, they had to average about 1/4 or less for me to feel confident.
If my gun's cool, the first 5 go in 1/4. And then after that, as soon as things heat up, I feel like it opens up just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, but that's the name of the game, right? But I mean, you obviously, yeah. Well, I would think you would know. You're doing pretty well.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like as far in the PRS game, I feel like guys claim their guns shoot better than they actually do. That's an unpopular opinion, but I do think that's right.
A lot of times, I think what holds a lot of shooters back, and I've heard this before, and I know you have too, is when they say, "Well, my gun shoots better than I do."
I hate that. I hate it.
Oh man,
there's nothing that makes me madder than that comment.
All right, that's 2 of us, because but you know why? It's I think that's just a way out for them to not put in the work.
Yeah, that makes there's just so much wrong with that comment. It just doesn't, it's not true. Like, I can take a guy right now and 100%, as long as, now I feel like if it's maybe an unbraked rifle and it kicks real hard, maybe you can claim that, right? Because you might suck at shooting that gun because it just hurts. And so you got to override your nervous system. But if I give you a BR in a matrix chassis or a foundation stock, and you got a 8-ounce trigger on it, and you got a good rear bag and a good bipod, you shoot better than a gun. Period. You might have to have a little tweaking to the way you do things, but in 5 minutes you'll shoot better than the gun.
I proved that theory. My machinist was telling me. My machinist was telling me how his dad just, he used to shoot really well, and all of a sudden, he's not that good of a shooter anymore. And I go, I said, it might just be his rifle. And he says, no, and I say, here. So I opened my safe and I gave him my my 6BR with foundation stock and a Collis 525 scope, and I gave him my hand-loaded ammo, and I said, here, take this to your dad and have him shoot it. And that afternoon, I started getting pictures of these little knots, 5-shot groups, and and his dad was all kinds of excited. He goes, man, I was starting to think that I was losing it. I said, There you go. So guess what he's building now? He's building a 6BR.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I said, you know what? Here, take this and let's find out, if it's really him.
Yeah. Well, there's a perfect example of like a guy that is holding himself back just because of that. All he needed to do is put a new barrel on his gun or get a new gun. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden he's shooting good again.
Another example of that, back when I used to shoot silhouette, there was this girl. She was 13 at the time or something like that, little girl, right? And she had a little rifle that her dad had bought her. Well, Mark Farr was a gunsmith and very high level silhouette shooter, and that was who I was going to matches with. He kept telling her dad, you got to get her a new rifle. He goes, well, I'll get her a new rifle when she gets above 20, 20 targets. Because she was shooting, out of 40, she was shooting like 13 or 14. He goes, when she gets above 20, I'll get her a new rifle. Well, during that match, because the rifle was so short, it didn't fit well in the rifle racks, and it fell and cracked the scope or did something. And Mark said, well, you know what? I got a backup she can use. And she used Mark's backup, and she shot in the 30s the minute they handed her a good rifle.
Wow.
But her dad wouldn't buy her a new rifle until she shot above 20.
I wish more people would realize that, and just because I know there's tons of people that just get held back by the fact that they say that, and or like because they have a factory rifle, and it's I think it's really hard to learn on a gun that shoots a minute, right?
There's no feedback. There's no the feedback's not accurate.
Yeah, you'll shoot something and it goes over here, and then you make a correction and then it goes over here, and you're like, wow, I really suck at reading the wind, and in all reality that's not the case, and then it's hard to build confidence doing that. I think that you need to learn on the easiest it's like training wheels on a bike. You don't throw a kid on a bike that's too big for them and that is hard to ride. You put them on the easiest thing possible, and so that they can learn how to do something. And so a BR in some sort of heavy stock that's easy, that's got a brake, that's your best way to learn, in my opinion. And then you can slowly build up from there. But I guess that's an unpopular opinion, because if you ask old boys, they say, oh, start with a 308. So then you can get used to the recoil and then go down. Yeah, it'll feel easier when you go to something, but I think you can pick up a lot of bad habits doing that. We were forced to go that direction. Well, at least I was, because I didn't have the ability to get a BR. That wasn't even like a thing when I started shooting, and I was started for hunting. And so like at least I put a brake on my gun, so it was a lot better that way. But a 6.5 Creedmoor was the lightest recoiling gun when I started, so like nobody was shooting a 6mm until later on. Whereas now it's like, okay, you could start with a 22 if you want, or a 22 Dasher or a 22 BR, or which I'm not advocating for those either, because your bullet selection isn't great. It's really hard just to beat a regular old Dasher or a BR. It's really hard.
BR is my favorite. It's just so easy, And
yeah, I feel like the Dasher is too.
Yeah, but you got to fire for them, or you got to find that brass or whatever. That's the only difference.
Alpha's brass is pretty easy. You just pick it up and shoot it.
Okay. Yeah, I've never tried Alpha brass. But,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's all I've ever shot. But well, no, I've shot Lapua. No, and I shoot for capstone, so it's not like. But that was my one stipulation, because I lived in Utah at the time, and I was like, hey, yeah, I'll shoot. And not that I don't like Lapua, I love Bob and Tom there at Alpha, and they've been good to me. So I'm like, I'm not going to switch that.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line, you can take any 6BR variant, BRA, BR, dash or whatever. They're going to shoot, you know.
Yeah.
And they're going to be easy to load for, all of the above.
Oh, I was just turning off my alarm so it wouldn't go off while we're
Okay.
going a little early in the morning.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you waking up this early to do this podcast, and it was fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I learned a lot. It's nice to be able to talk to. I mean, I've been a fan for a long time. It's about because you put out a lot of content, and being able to listen to guys that are knowledgeable and put out good information on low development stuff like that. And it's a big name in a different game, you know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
It's cool to be able to do it. It's fun to learn from somebody that knows more than you.
Well, that's why I called you.
Well, no, that's why I was like, yeah, I wanna listen. This guy's smart.
All right, man. I appreciate it. I tell you what, I didn't even prep you, but usually I get a recommendation for somebody I should talk to.
I don't know. There's just so many good guys. Have you ever had Dave Preston on?
No, that's I want to.
Yeah, that's one of them guys where I haven't heard. You know, he's just. I know Dave. He's a great guy. He's quiet, and you don't hear him a lot. And
yeah,
but he's got a lot of good stuff to say.
All right. Well, I'll reach out to him and say that you know, the way this works is once you've been recommended, you have to do it. It's a rule that I made up.
Okay. Well, that's a good rule. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing Dave's.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah. Yep.